Hello everyone, welcome to another watercolor tutorial. We're going to be painting this ultra cute chipmunk, squirrel, whatever you want it to be. I just took an image from the internet and drew a squirrel based on that image, so you're welcome to do the same or trace something that you see. Just to get the rough shape of the squirrel, I also added a tree stump, but once you have your drawing penciled out, we're going to start with brown watercolor, and I'm going to, where am I going to start here? We're just going to start with the body, and keep in mind that our squirrel is going to be ultra fluffy, so I'm going to have hairs kind of coming loose like this. So you can do a little bit of that now and just add some little flicks of your paintbrush to give the illusion that there's hair there, but we're going to go in and kind of alter that a little bit later. So here I'm just filling in the body, and I'm making this bottom portion a little bit darker because I'm going to pretend that the sun is coming from here, and this part is going to be shaded. It's going to have shade cast on it from the rest of the body, including the tail is going to have some shading as well. So this first layer, you kind of don't have to be super hyper specific. We're just getting some values down, and make sure to leave a little white strip just on the other side of the leg or foot, just because that is going to be kind of the white fluffy part. There we go. Our cutie pie is all filled in there. And I'm just gonna kind of do the same for the tail. And I'm again adding some of those flicks, trying to follow my pencil marks with the flicks. Can't forget the foot, of course. Now my tail here is going to be a lot darker than it is now, so I'm just going to start adding those darker features just right here, because the body is casting shade on the tail. So I'm just adding that in. I might even add a little bit of black in there to make that brown darker. And then I'm going to spread it out, not spread it out, but blend it out so that there's some sort of gradient going on. And I'm just following the same pattern as before so that I don't get these blotchy dried sections. Sort of like here, it kind of dried funny. And that's partly because I'm not using cotton paper. So you just have to adjust for the kind of paper that you're using. I want my squirrel to be a little bit red. So I'm just adding this reddish tinge to my brown, a little bit of black as well. And I'm just gonna kind of dry this with a hair dryer before I move on. Okay, so we're just going over that first part that we went over, so the main kind of body of the squirrel. And I'm using my Princeton brush just to flick out some of that hair. And actually the ears are going to be, they're going to have a little bit of that reddish tinge as well, so I'm going to just add that in now. So I'm just flicking out, like flaring out some tufts of hair on my tail before blending it all together. We're gonna add some extra kind of shadowy portions on the ears here. I'm also adding a little bit of fluff. So next we're just going to paint this stump, and I'm adding quite a bit more black to my brown so that it really differentiates from the brownish reddish tones of the squirrel. So this log of ours is going to be very uneven. The log is optional, you don't have to add it, but I felt like the squirrel was, you know, a little bit lonely without some sort of post to stand on. And I'm just adding some darker shading in some portions of this log so that it looks like the sun is hitting certain parts of it. And what I'm going to do is fill in the top portion with a much lighter value. Okay, so after your painting is completely dry, I changed my mind. I was going to use a fine tip marker, but instead I am going to use watercolor, continue using watercolor for the details, simply because I only have a black fine tip marker and I do want to use brown features for the details. So let's start with the ears. We're going to define the ears in that we're going to add quite a bit of fluff to them, or little hairs peeking out. So unfortunately I painted my hairs the wrong direction the first time around. So I'm hoping that it won't really show that much. But here I am just painting on the little tiny fluffs that are coming from the ear. And then I'm watering that color down a little bit, and I'm doing the front portion as well, just like so. And I don't want that to be as dark as the back, because the back of the ear is supposed to be a little bit more shaded. And we're doing the same thing for the second ear here. And I'm just using my size quadruple 0 Winsor & Newton brush, one of my favorite detail brushes, linked in the description, as always. It's an excellent brush for these super, super fine hairs that we're painting on the ears. Okay, now we're gonna move that fluffage, as I would call it, and we're gonna move it down the squirrel so that the fluff is also coming off the face. So again, we want to water that brown down quite a bit so it's not sticking out quite a bit from our squirrel. And we're just adding all of the hair-like features. Kind of looks like our squirrel has a beard. And I'm going to just add those features on the front as well. Now I'm going to fill in the eye. So I'm going to take some black watercolor and I'm going to paint like this blown up almond almost. And I left some white features in that eye so it looked like the squirrel has a glare. And I'm going just to take brown watercolor and add some details just around the eyes as well. That's a bit too dark, so I'm just gonna blend it out. take a bigger brush for a second just to really blend that out because that was way too dark. We want to give him a little nose. Again, just gonna use my brush to blend the nose out. So now I'm gonna just define the arms of the little guy. So I'm taking some darker brown and just outlining the bottom, like the armpit part, I guess. And I'm flaring that out. I'm really using my thicker brush here to help me along because it kind of helps blend out the color a lot more seamlessly. And I'm basically just following the outline of my pencil marks. And I'm using that as a little guide for myself. I am going to take some gray watercolor and just add some hairs to that white fluffy, or that part that we left white, that fluffy part in the front. So I am going to take that black marker and just define a few things. I'm going to define just around the eyes. I'm going to define the just the undersides of the fingers. Just kind of that armpit area a little bit. The nose. Just adding a few little hairs on the ears. Just outlining the foot a little bit. Just a few hairs. I'm kind of outlining the hairs in quite a few places, and this is because the marker just adds a little bit more definition. So I have obviously the lines, the details from the paintbrushes, the little streaks of the fur, but by adding it with marker, it just, because I'm not doing it as much as I use the paint, it just helps bring out those individual hairs and those individual little features. So you definitely don't have to do this, especially if you don't have a fine tip marker or you don't want to risk it with a pen or whatever. Totally optional, but I just wanted to add this. And I'm also just adding a few marks on the little rock. And there we have it, our adorable little squirrel. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, hit like on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.